Tomislav on Patreon writes, do you have comment about the Second Sino-Japanese War and Sino-German collaboration? I think it's interesting, but is not well known in Europe or the USA. Now, I'm not super well versed on the Far East in general. It's not something that, as a European, I'm mega interested in or have a focus on. My focus is on the European conflict because I'm European, that makes sense. So I'm not probably the best person to comment too much on this. However, I do think it's interesting that the Germans are giving the Japanese support right up until and even slightly after the declaration of war. I think that shows two things. One, that Germany is still interested, even up to 1937, in learning new techniques and whatever from other countries, like the Soviet Union, etc., as it did earlier on, but also it shows that the Japanese government perhaps didn't plan for this war as much as maybe they expected. I don't know, I get the impression that the Japanese military is really leading the country to war, not the other way around, because if they had, they would have, said to Germany, hey, let's, please cut the support to the Chinese because we're about to declare war. Now, that's just my opinion, I don't know. But I do find it very interesting that that is actually the case. It's also interesting that the war in the Far East is kind of split, just like, I think the one in Europe is. There are forgotten battles in that as well, and I think the Sino-Japanese war is very much, it's almost a forgotten battle. And people know it's there, they kind of talk about it, they don't really go into it though. There's not very many books in the shops, at least not in England. And you're going to be hard-pressed to find super amounts of detail on the Sino-Japanese War, at least in English, compared to, let's say, Okinawa, Iwo Jima, etc. Those battles are well covered. A lot of you have been asking me about Burma. I've got a wish list of books on Burma, but again, it's like, there's only like 5 or 6. You're struggling to find too many on that campaign because it's not very well documented, it's not very well known, because people don't tend to have an interest in it. People really do have an interest in certain battles, so this is one of those ones. What I do find interesting though, for the whole of World War II, and something I will pass comment on, is that I don't think it was a good idea for Japan to declare war on the United States, or not even declare war, just bomb Pearl Harbor. If you're struggling economically and you're fighting a land war in Asia, certainly fighting against a new superpower or a new great power probably isn't the best idea. And I also don't think it's an idea that just because Japan bombs America, you should declare war either, Mr. Hitler, because I think that is probably a really bad decision. And I know there's a reason for the Kriegsmarine to want to do that, or the U-boat campaign, but when you're fighting in the Soviet Union, you haven't knocked them out yet, and that's a conflict as big as any in history, because Barbarossa is the biggest land invasion of all time. Maybe declaring war on the United States is not a good idea. So it's really interesting, because that second week in December is really the turning point of the war. You have the bombing of Pearl Harbor, you have the declaration of war on the United States by Germany as a result of that, and then just slightly at the same time, you have the Soviets counterattacking at Moscow and defeating the Wehrmacht at the gates of Moscow. It's like, whoops. And I'm not saying that the war was lost at that point. It still could have been won, I think. I reckon that it could have been won if things had played out differently, hypothetically. But it is very much, in hindsight, the turning point of the war, because everything seems to go wrong at that same time. And Sergius also wanted to know what my favourite history book was, since I said that the Battle of Warsaw 1920 wasn't my favourite history book. I'm going to go ahead and say that Berlin, The Downfall by Anthony Beevor is probably my most favourite book, or at least the one I most enjoyed, because I don't know, everyone says about his book on Stalingrad, and I've got that down there, and it's very, very good. The issue, I think, is that I preferred the Berlin battle. I don't know why. That book I just really, really got into, really enjoyed. It's been a while since I read it. I can't pass too many comments on it, but it's the one of the only 2 books I've got in both physical format and also on the Kindle as well. The other being Bridge Too Far by Cornelius Ryan. So yeah, I'm going to go with that. It'll probably change. I do like Glance. In terms of textbooks, Glance is probably the best textbook you're going to get. Anyway guys, if you've got any more questions, let me know. If you're a Patreon user, get asking me questions. You didn't ask very many. And I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching guys. Bye for now.